Hey there, I'm Kat, and this is Brews and Reviews. In today's video, I want to talk to you guys about The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. This book is set in Madrid, the capital of Spain, in the Golden Age of Spain, and following on after the defeat of the Spanish Armada against the English and Elizabeth I. We start off with a lonely rich woman called Valentina who discovers that her scullion, Lucia, has a talent for creating these little miracles, which is essentially like little bits of magic, and she decides that she's going to use Lucia to improve her connections within the world and her standing, which is all going great until she catches the attention of the disgraced former secretary to the King of Spain, who takes notice of her, wants to become her patron, and wants to enter her into this competition to become the king's champion against the English, essentially. So Lucia is thrown into this world that she is quite ill prepared for, and she has to balance this delicate tightrope of using her magic but in a way that wouldn't be deemed heresy, and also not causing anything else that would seek to have the church be very interested in her, including her family heritage. So I don't want to say anything else about the plot because I feel like saying anything else would be spoilery and we want to avoid that. But I do have some things that I want to discuss about this book just generally that aren't spoilery. So first off, let's talk about the fact this is historical fiction, and it's not usually the genre that Leigh Bardugo writes in. I'm a fan of Leigh Bardugo's, I've read everything else that she's published, and historical fiction is not usually my bag. Having said that, I really enjoyed this book, and it is historical fiction with fantasy. Now, if you're looking to go into this book and you're worried about the historical element, you don't really need to know anything about Spain's Golden Age. It says enough about it in the book. All you need to have is like a vague awareness of the Spanish Inquisition and like what they did. Just a little inkling might help you a little bit, but I think Leigh Bardugo does a good job of explaining things. I think she is well researched. I am not an expert on this period of time or history, so I can't tell you how well she did that, but from having seen Leigh Bardugo speak live twice and once hearing her talk about this book, it does feel like she has done a lot of research on this and has tried to make it as authentic as possible. So not being an expert about this time period and all like the religious struggles and like the cultural things that were happening, nothing took me out of it. I didn't feel like I was confused by all of the historical things that were happening. I felt like it was easy enough to get into the book. And I think that Leigh Bardugo sort of welcomed us into that world well enough that it didn't feel uncomfortable, but it also wasn't overwhelming. I think that kind of takes a back seat to the fact that like this is the story and the story is really good and really interesting and you're like, cool. I understand why the historical things are a pressure, but like this is the story, and you focus on Lucia and this competition and her story of using her magic when she maybe shouldn't. So I think if you're worried about the historical fiction elements, don't be. Leigh Bardugo's writing is just as fantastic as ever. If you like the way that she crafts a story, you'll like this book. Something I found really interesting about this book was the magic system, and it's not really ever explained to us because every person that has a version of magic seems to have a slightly different version of magic, and I think the way that Lucia's magic is expressed is really cool. I'm trying not to give spoilers here, so I'll use something that was referenced in, I think, the first chapter, where Lucia tried to turn something mundane into gold, and they turned out to be spiders, and they like crawled all over and bit her and stuff like that, which I just think is really cool because I really enjoy when there are consequences to magic, and that is not meaning the consequences of the Spanish Inquisition, because they obviously don't like magic. They obviously don't like anyone who is different to what they deem the ideal. Just sort of shifting topics here, but I really liked the threat of the church and of heresy regarding all things, not just the use of magic, but I mean, like, it definitely adds a pressure to Lucia being publicly known as someone who can perform little miracolitos, as well as the general pressure of anyone could accuse somebody of anything and then they could be carted away and forced to admit that they had done something and cavorted with the devil, even though they could only admit that because they were being tortured. So I think having it in this historical setting actually really works because it combines like the pressure of just what this character is feeling and like the powerful people around her, as well as, you know, the outside pressures of being deemed a heretic for her public use of magic and her creation of these miracolitos, as well as other things about her that might be of interest to the Inquisition should they get a hold of her. There's another character in the book that I haven't really talked about so far, and that's Santaniel. He's a servant of the disgraced secretary for Spain, who's holding this competition for the king's champions. And he sort of acts as a training mentor for Lucia and trying to help her develop in her magic and sort of explore more possibilities, because she can only see the way that she has experienced her magic, and he sort of broadens her mind a little bit. And I appreciated that because it felt like a nice way of letting the reader in on, no, this could be how the magic works, rather than just what we know from Lucia. I think there are some other great characters in here. There is a romance, there's a competition, there is some dark stuff. I really enjoyed how it went, and I really loved the end. It just felt like a contented, right ending. I don't know how to quite describe it, but I left this book feeling like, yeah, that was the perfect end for this book, and I'm happy with that. Regardless of whether the ending is happy or not, which I won't say because that would be spoilers, but I was content with the ending. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, so I definitely recommend that you pick it up. And you know, if you like Leigh Bardugo and you're just nervous about the historical setting, don't be. She makes it really easy to get into, and I think she's done a great job with this. So if you like this video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!